Hello and welcome to Snow Warden Training 2020-21. My name's Phil Spalding and I'm a Health and Safety Consultant with Derbyshire County Council. For 1 year only, hopefully, this training will not be delivered via a classroom environment due to coronavirus. A quick overview of what we're going to cover within this training programme is a look at the winter service scheme that Derbyshire County Council runs, how to clear snow in practice, how to do a risk assessment to ensure you carry out the task safely, and also how you communicate with Derbyshire County Council on the work that you've done. So, the winter service scheme last year entailed 49 town and parish councils taking part, with 48 involved in actual snow clearing and 1 providing vital information. Also, a dozen schools agreed to clear snow from outside of their premises, and a community hub participated in the scheme as well. So hopefully, if you are listening to this presentation, you are part of one of the town and parish councils, or part of the school community, or part of the community hub. So in total, 49 tonnes of grit was delivered, which is 2,450 bags, each containing 20 kilograms of grit. So in our winter climate within Derbyshire, that's a lot of tonnes and a lot of grit. Okay, and also on a slightly different scheme, there were also 53 farmers and contractors participating in the scheme, clearing some of the more rural communities that can be cut off when snow falls. So, having volunteered to be a snow warden, what in essence is it we're asking you to do? Well, obviously, we want you to help deal with potentially heavy snowfall and ice. We want you to provide information on local conditions using the County Council's website, report situations that affect vulnerable residents, coordinate volunteers to clear snow and distribute grit, and report empty grit bins. In return for this contribution, what will Derbyshire County Council provide for you? Well, a free delivery of up to a tonne of salt in 20 kilogram bags, which obviously involves manual handling, and we'll be coming back to that subject later. There is also a website facility for you to report your snow clearing activities and to notify the council of any problems or issues in your local area, because we must emphasise that we're working in partnership with this, and your extra help and support will be helping your community to stay safe and clear of snow and ice. There's also a service where we'll give you early notification of severe weather that may affect your area. This has been adapted from the Met Office weather reports. So a two-way communication process essential in making sure that you can contribute as much as possible to the safety of your community. So one of the questions that we get asked quite a lot is, will I get sued if anything goes wrong? Well, the answer to that really is, don't believe the myths that you hear. Although we do have where there's blame, there's a claim culture out there to a certain extent. Is this actually likely to happen to you? Probably not. To date, there have been no claims against Derbyshire County Council, and even in the unlikely event that you ever do get sued for doing something on our behalf, Derbyshire County Council's insurance is there to cover us anyway. But even setting that aside, it's very unlikely that you'll ever be sued for any injuries. If you've done the job to the best of your ability and have not done it with malicious intent, i.e. made the situation worse, it's always the case that in health and safety, if you are trying to improve a situation and make it better, then that is what you need to do, and there'll be no blame attached to you if something goes wrong. There's also something called the Government Snow Code, which again is the government's attempt really to try and reassure people that if you're following that code, then you will not get sued if something goes wrong. So recommendation from this training is that you get hold of a copy of the government snow code, give that a read. Hopefully that will give you some reassurance. And all the documents that's referred to during this training is available on the Derbyshire County Council website, of which more later. Okay, so inevitably there are some documents that we do need you to complete before you can take part in this service. This document you see on the slide is called a Fit to Participate form, very straightforward, but please read the declaration. It does require you to self-declare that you're fit enough to be able to do the job and that you don't have any pre-existing conditions that may lead to you injuring yourself while trying to support and help us do this. Okay, so you really do need to complete this form. Make sure that the organisation that you're participating with, your parish council, community group, school, etc., has got one of these before you do any work in relation to snow clearing. Okay, so an illustration of the sorts of things that you're going to be needing while doing snow clearance as part of the Snow Warden scheme. Obviously there's rock salt. Remember, they come in 20 kilo bags. So we'll be looking into the manual handling of those bags in a little while. Also snow shovels. They come in all shapes and sizes, the main two being what you see in the graphic. Make sure you use the one that's most suitable for you in terms of lifting, one that feels most comfortable. Obviously a set of gloves as a dual purpose. One, to keep your hands warm, and two, that you have a good grip of the shovel while you're using it. A good winter coat with several layers or padding is essential. Although obviously whilst working on the scheme you'll be generating a lot of body heat, it is important that you keep warm at all times while carrying out the work. High-vis jacket, we're all used to seeing those out and about. Obviously lighting, not always the best in the winter. It's important that traffic can see you, so with reflective stripes on your high-vis jacket you'll stand out. A hat there. Now, hats not particularly popular these days, but in winter it's essential when you're carrying out this role. A certain amount of body heat is lost through the head, so if you're out and about in the cold for a long time, you may start to lose your body heat. Okay, a sturdy, firm pair of good old-fashioned Wellingtons will keep your feet and lower legs dry. And also give you a good grip on slippery surfaces. But in addition to that, you could always use ice grips as well while you're out there on the compacted snow and ice. They will obviously give you a much better footing, but please beware once you've come out from the snow and ice that you remove them, because they're very, very slippy on other surfaces other than ice and snow. And obviously a nice hot flask may not always be possible for you to pop in and out of buildings, especially with coronavirus and all that implies. So have a hot flask with you, soup, tea, coffee, anything that you fancy as long as it's hot. Okay, so we've filled in our participation form, we've got our equipment. So, where and when to clear snow. Now, obviously, the organisation that you will be assisting, parish council, local council, voluntary group, school, etc., should already have a plan of locations where your help will be needed. So there should be a plan clearly marking which pathways that you'll be working on or which areas you'll be working on. And the plan should be realistic. Okay, based on available resources. So there's no point in committing to clearing the pathways of a whole village if there's only a very small number of snow wardens available to do it. So you must be realistic in terms of your planning, and you must be realistic in terms of your resources. So a certain amount of organisation will be required to make sure you maximise those resources to the best of your ability, so that your community has pathways clear where the most footfall in the village or town is going to be. Okay, so when are you going to clear snow? Well, it's always easier, if possible, to shift snow when it's fresh. Once it's become compacted by lots of feet trampling it down, it becomes a much harder job, and in some ways only really grit is going to do the job. So it's easy to shift fresh snow, which may mean getting up earlier in the morning perhaps than we would like to, before school starts or before people are walking around going about their normal business, but I'm afraid that comes with the job. But obviously safety always has to be borne in mind. And so obviously, although you've got your high-vis jacket, it makes sense not to be working in the hours of darkness because of visibility and danger generally. Okay, so let's take a look at how to clear snow. First point to make is that you should work within your own capabilities. Okay, so it's not a race, it's not an athletic sport, it's a useful job, an essential job in your community, but that shouldn't be at the risk of you coming to harm or injuring yourself. So work within your own capabilities, take plenty of breaks when you need them, and stop when you need to stop. So remembering the equipment that we referred to a few slides ago, make sure you wear it properly and make sure you use it properly. Okay, so safety equipment is only safe if it's used within the confines of its usage. Normally you should only clear snow and ice from the footway. There is a caveat to this. There are some very small villages that don't have pathways, footways. So in these instances, and if the risk assessment and the snow plan allow, please do clear a small footway along the road, the carriageway. Okay, same distance as we've already talked about, sort of 1.5 meters, 4.5 feet, something like that. Okay, but normally it's clearing snow and ice from footways only, but roads if agreed on the risk assessment and the snow plan. So the idea is to remove the snow and ice while it's fresh, if at all possible, because it's much easier to do, or it's compacted down. And then obviously that is the time to apply salt, so that any residual moisture does not refreeze and create a hazard. So let's look at some of the do's and don'ts in terms of snow clearing. Make sure you have help to move the salt bags to strategic locations before you need them. Ideally, they will be placed in the places where you most need them. But as they are 20 kilogram salt bags, the less manual handling that you do with them, the better. When you're actually clearing snow, make sure you pay extra attention to the snow and ice that builds up on steps and steep pathways, because obviously this is an area of greater risk, and the consequences of slipping or falling in these areas are greater. So you might need to use more than the average amount of salt on these areas to make sure they're clear. And we'll be looking at salt spreading in a video in the very near future. Do keep in contact with your snow warden, with the organisation that you're working with. We want to know, and they want to know, that you're safe, and they need to be able to direct you to areas where salt spreading might be required. And when you are clearing a pathway, Make sure it's of sufficient width. So we're looking at 1.2 meters to 1.5 meters, sort of about 4.5 feet, something like that. Obviously this is so that pedestrians can pass by each other. People with pushchairs get through the gap. So we need sufficient width. So in terms of manual handling, it is a useful exercise to make sure that you warm up your muscles before doing any heavy work. And this applies really across any sort of activity you're doing. If your muscles are stiff, cold, and then you force them to work hard at very short notice, you're more likely to get injuries. And manual handling is a hazardous activity, so please make sure you warm up your muscles before doing any work. This could be from walking to the location where you're doing the work, but make sure you do a few stretches, a few bends, and make sure that as you're working, if you're tired, stop, have a break, but don't let your muscles cool down. Obviously, we looked earlier on at the pictures of what you should be wearing in terms of doing this job. So wear layers of clothing. Okay, so make sure that you've got sufficient layers of clothing to keep you warm, so that those muscles are not strained. Okay, also think about where you're going to move the snow. Okay, we don't want you moving it twice, so make sure that you have a bit of a think before you start the job to make sure that you're not moving the snow once, but they're getting in the way of something else and having to move it again. And make sure that you move the snow the shortest distance possible. So all this really is about making sure that the manual handling part of the job is kept to the as little as possible, so that you're not putting yourself at risk of injury. So more information on manual handling. Keep your back straight as you move from the squat position to the upright position. Use your shoulder muscles as much as possible. As you lift the snow shovel, hold it close to your upper body as possible, and don't twist your upper body as you throw snow. So basic rules in terms of manual handling is do not put strain on your back. You get up and down in terms of manual handling using your thigh muscles, using your abdominal muscles, because they're the strongest in the body. The weakest muscles in the body, surprisingly enough, are your back muscles. Okay, so try and use a smooth motion in terms of getting down to the load that you're shifting and again moving up. And don't twist your spine when you're throwing the snow or moving the snow. Okay, so as a basic rule, you're using the strongest muscles in the body and not the weakest. So more tips on manual handling. Make sure you pace yourself. So it's not a race. We don't need you to be an Olympic style athlete in terms of clearing snow. If you're tired, take a break. If you're worn out, stop. Okay, make sure that you use a shovel that fits you, so you can see that there are two different sizes there. Okay, and just because it's capable of lifting a lot of snow, either of those models, doesn't mean that you have to lift a heavy load every time. Okay, pick up a load that suits you and doesn't put strain on your back, as we mentioned earlier on. It should be a comfortable height and head width, and it shouldn't be too heavy. So if you keep a fair amount of space between your hands, it enables you to have greater leverage in terms of lifting, and again, putting less strain on other parts of the body. So just to re-emphasize the messages from earlier on, when you're doing a manual handling task, use the strongest muscles in the body, the leg muscles, the abdominal muscles. Don't use your back muscles. Wherever possible, push snow when you can, and use your legs to lift when you can't push it. Use your legs, not your spine. Don't bend over at the waist when lifting. Okay, so basic rule of thumb is if once you've actually got your load of snow on your shovel, you should no longer be looking at it. If you keep your head looking straight ahead, you will not be bending at the spine, and you'll be lifting with the strongest muscles that we talked about. So think in terms of what a weightlifter does. Once a weightlifter actually has his hands on the weight and lifts, he's not looking down at the load he's picking up, he's actually looking straight ahead. Same principle for you guys. And don't try to get all the way down to the bottom of deep snow all at once. Try using small loads, and there may be more of them, but obviously it gets the job done without putting extra strain on your back. So now we have a grit spreading demo showing a former assistant director of the council demonstrating how to spread the grit or salt, and what you're looking for basically is 40 grams of salt per square meter of snow. Okay, so follow the instructions on the bottom right hand side of this screen and you should be able to watch this video. So the organisation that you volunteered for, your community group, school, parish council, etc., should have in place a document called a risk assessment. Now this risk assessment may be on a Derbyshire County Council template that's available on the website, or it may be their own template. Doesn't really matter as long as it consists of these 5 elements on this slide. Okay, so a risk assessment in essence starts with identifying what the hazards are of the task. So obviously the task is snow clearing. The hazards include slips, trips and falls, manual handling. Obviously coronavirus is a new hazard that needs to be included this year, coming into contact with traffic, many hazards. The second part of a risk assessment process is to identify who may be harmed and how. So obviously in this instance it's you as a volunteer, could be the colleagues you're working with, members of the public, etc. Okay, so in order to minimise the risk of those hazards hurting the people that you've identified, you must put in place control measures. And control measures are there not always to eliminate risk, but to lower the risk to the lowest possible level. Okay, so you'll see from the template or from the existing risk assessment that control measures are there. So for example, manual handling is to use the correct technique, to take breaks. Control measure again for snow clearing is to wear the correct PPE or personal protective equipment. So many controls. Once this process has been completed, it needs to be recorded. So as I've already said, the recorded version of the risk assessment will either be the Derbyshire County Council template, which is on the website, or it'll be one that the organisation that you're volunteering for has already completed. Now, risk assessments are not an historical record. They are a living, breathing document. They are there to be looked at. They will need to be reviewed if there's an accident or there's a change in the procedure, etc. So not just something that's put on a shelf and a box ticked. A risk assessment is a vital document to inform you of what the hazards are you may be facing and how to control the risks. So, all the excellent work that you'll be doing to assist your community and Derbyshire County Council will need to be communicated. So we need to know who's doing what out there. So your organisation, who you'll be working for, your parish council, school, voluntary group, etc., needs to report what snow clearing activity is going on, so that people accessing our website can see what areas are safe and which aren't. Obviously, the more you communicate with us, the more it helps us to coordinate activities, which will mean that we're not duplicating effort in the same area, so we don't need lots of people in one area doing a good job, but nobody in another area, leaving hazards for people to encounter. And it also helps us to maximise resources and direct them to the areas of most need. So communication, there is a Derbyshire County Council website in terms of snow clearing and snow wardens. All the resources that you will need in order to be able to communicate with us and tell us what you're up to and what you've achieved is there. And obviously this works two-way, in as much that if you're needing more grit and salt, that's the place to get those supplies from. So in order to be able to communicate all the information that we've just talked about on the previous slide, you'll see there a website address, www.derbyshire.gov.uk/snowwardens. On there you'll find all of the documents that you will need in order to be able to communicate with us, tell us what you're doing, ask us for supplies, etc. But if in the unlikely event you can't access the website, there is a number there, call Derbyshire, 01629 533 190. So that's bringing us towards the end of our presentation. If you've got any questions or issues you'd like to raise after this presentation, please email snow@derbyshire.gov.uk. Obviously you can talk to your local groups and get experience or answers from them. But obviously if there are outstanding issues that obviously we can't discuss face-to-face due to the coronavirus restrictions on classroom-based activities, there is an email address that you can send your queries to. So that's snow@derbyshire.gov.uk. So finally, on behalf of Derbyshire County Council, I would like to thank you for taking part in the Snow Warden scheme for 2020-21. Let's hope it's a very mild winter and your services will be required on a minimal basis. But please ensure that you do all of the things that we talked about. And there is lots more information on the website. And good luck. Thank you for listening.